Vegas. You're tuned in to Guerilla Cross Radio.
Hi, everybody. This is Alan Snell with LVSportsBiz.com, where business meets sports here in bustling, dynamic Las Vegas, Nevada. We are celebrating our second anniversary at LVSportsBiz.com. We started in early June of 2017, and we are having a series of 4 podcasts to celebrate our second anniversary. And tonight we are in episode 3. I'm proud to say that our podcasts are presented by Adore Oil. And today we have a guest that, to me, is really one of the biggest business/promoters in Southern Nevada, and I've known Dana White now for about 7 years since starting at the Review Journal. I want to welcome Dana White to LVSportsBiz.com's podcast.
What's up, buddy?
Dana, I got to say, I left town in 2016, and I had some regrets, and it was a bad mistake to leave Las Vegas at the time. And one of the regrets I had was not writing and reporting the story about UFC selling for more than $4 billion. To me, it is one of the most underrated business transactions, not even in sports, just on the business page.
Right. No,
And,
I agree with you.
You know, I don't think this town truly grasped the kind of journey that you guys took from 2001 to 2016, after buying the property for $2 million in 2001. And I was pissed off. I missed out on reporting that story in the summer of 2016, and I thought it was underreported. And I want to talk to you. You're 3 years removed from that now.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, at the time, I saw the reports saying that you had a 9% interest of that transaction. Either way, it's hundreds of millions of dollars coming your way. Let me ask you this, Dana. What impact, what changes have happened to your life personally over the last 3 years, looking back now at that transaction?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is that I don't work every day with my best friends, Frank and Lorenzo. But, working with Ari and WME IMG Endeavor has been awesome. These guys are, we're aligned. We're all headed in the same direction and have the same philosophies on where the business should go. So it's been great. As far as my personal life, I mean, not much changed. It wasn't like, I had money before that. It wasn't like I hit the lottery, but I did build a ridiculous house in the last couple of years. So
Okay.
I literally bought out all my neighbors. Bought all their houses. I literally knocked on their door and said, I want to buy your house, and cut deals with them, and, tore their houses down and built my house. So now I really don't have any neighbors. So that's a good thing.
Let's just jog back a few years, because you had mentioned that's blowing up. The video, 3 guys and 3 letters are blowing up. It's a 27-minute historic look back at UFC through the prism of the 2016 transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And the video is, I think everyone should check it out. In the middle of our podcast, I want to play a little snippet from it,
Okay.
so you can kind of check out some of the evolution of that.
It's cool to watch, to look back now.
It's very well done.
So that thing was filmed weeks after the sale. And, we were doing these 25 shorts for 25 years of the UFC. And I really had to go after Frank and Lorenzo to do those interviews. They didn't want to do them. And I said, listen, we have to do these. This is, part of the story of the sale, and we have to have this, especially now while it's all fresh. And then now, as we watch it and look back, it's you're talking over 3 years ago. It's pretty powerful.
It's well crafted, a lot of history,
Yeah.
a lot of terrific video.
But it's super emotional for the three of us
absolutely.
when we watch it. So I'm so glad that we did it.
Let me ask you, was that another? Let me talk to you about the value. What was your reaction when you heard that this deal was going to go down north of $4 billion. Because when I would, on a annual basis at the RJ, I would go in and talk to Lorenzo about some of the international plans. We do like a year in review kind of story. And people were talking about the value around $2.5 billion.
Right.
And, when you first heard that this deal was going down for just north of $4 billion, what was your initial reaction?
Well, I knew that the Fertittas weren't going to take a dollar less than $4.2 billion. And, that was their number. They were stuck on that number. And as everybody started coming through, and I mean everybody from every major network, big hedge funds, and all these guys, the number was anywhere between that people were bidding was anywhere between 3.7 to 5 billion. It was a company that bid 5 billion on this thing too. But it was also about selling it to the right people.
Okay. To put this in perspective, this is literally double what NBA teams go for.
Right. Yeah, well, this is a truly global business too. When you buy an NBA team, whether you're in Boston or, you're in these certain markets, the UFC is actually global, and, we do fights all over the world. I'm going to China next week. We're opening a performance institute in China, and we're opening some down in Mexico, one over in Puerto Rico. And, I don't think that you said it earlier, and you're absolutely right when you were talking about people don't really grasp how big this thing was with the sale and everything else. People don't get it. And if I told you what the company's worth now, 3 years after the sale, it would blow your mind. And it's so weird because this thing just sort of flies under the radar.
Exactly. Let me talk to you what I think is kind of another hidden value in the whole deal. And that is, I love the in-house production, the content that you guys crank out at every level. I think gives you guys a huge edge. You get your message out. You completely control the message. In fact, I got to confess, my favorite show was you looking for a fight. You
right.
like showing up in New York. My favorite scene was when you were like out on like the bayous of Louisiana, I think,
right.
and you came in to eat some like gator burger or something.
right.
And
right.
I think you had a little too much time though on the boat though. I think you wanted to kind of get back to shore, if I recall correct.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I'm not into that whole nature shit. I'm not into that. I don't like. So what we do on the show is things that make us feel uncomfortable and that we don't really love to do.
But talk a little about the value of UFC in terms of the kind of content, the original content that you guys crank out at every level. I mean, I think it's network quality production, in my opinion.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we do everything in-house. This whole business is run in-house.
And to what extent did it affect the value of the sale?
It's huge, Basically, we built a business where we didn't have to depend on anybody. We had to get on pay-per-view, and getting on TV obviously was huge and helped, and it helps create a lot more revenue. But as streaming started to come with YouTube and all these other, you create your own network like UFC Fight Pass. The way that we had built the business, we were made for this next level, streaming and internet and social media, all this stuff. This company was built for that. We used to dream of a day where I have this philosophy that, I don't care what color you come from, what country you come from, what color you are, what language you speak, we're all human beings, and fighting's in our DNA. We get it and we like it. And I believe that this would work all over the world. And if we could get to a day where when you put on the right fight with the right guys in the right place at the right time, and the whole world could have the ability to watch the fight at the same time without cutting 1,000 different television deals, that there is no ceiling on how big this could be. 320 million people in that ballpark in the United States and 7 billion people worldwide. That's our market. So, now with streaming, that's going to end up becoming a reality. And like I was saying to you, this thing kind of flies under the radar with so many people. And as we, ESPN Plus we're on right now, plus we have UFC Fight Pass, our own network.
I remember when you guys unveiled it about 3-4 years ago. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as we start to build this thing, it's just people can't wrap their heads around how big this could really be. but I can.
Let's talk a little about the content. So I'm coming from this from a business standpoint. I don't know what do you have, like 900 fighters under contract?
600.
600 under contract. I'm not going to recite like 400 of your fighters, but I want to talk about the content. Number one, the spectacle kind of presentation that you give, because it's funny. The Vegas Golden Knights they've received a lot of high praise for their big over the top show, and I was thinking, nothing against the Golden Knights, they're unbelievable.
Right.
UFC has been doing over the top spectacle kind of sport presentation for years in this town.
Right.
Talk a little about creating the spectacle, but also walking the tightrope to make sure that and you'll understand where I'm coming from, kind of the shenanigans outside of the cage kind of stuff,
Right.
the Habib,
Right.
flying over the fence kind of deals. How do you walk that tightrope by creating this unbelievable over-the-top spectacle event while making sure that you don't compromise the quality of the fight?
So we know, first of all, I'm a huge fight fan since I was a kid. I always believed that I knew what fight fans wanted to see, and if I had the chance to do it myself, I could do it better than everybody else.
Is that what you've done with UFC?
That's what I've tried to do.
Okay.
So when we took over, myself and the Fertittas started implementing all the things that we loved about the fight business, taking out all the things that we hated about the fight business, and building our own style of a show that was completely different than anybody had ever seen before. And if you watch HBO, whom I consider the best, consider them the gold standard of combat sports, always did as a kid and everything else. But even with HBO, they were never innovative. They were good. They were really good.
It was a solid show, no doubt about it.
Show, everything was great. But they never changed. If you looked at a show from HBO in 1980 to 2010, the only difference is HD. Some different graphics and, nothing really changed. We completely flipped the model. And the old owner of the UFC, HBO, and other networks, all they care about is the live presentation. You know what I mean? How does it look on TV? The television broadcast. How about the people in the venue? Those people actually spent way more money. They had to buy plane tickets to come out here. They had to get rooms. They had to buy the tickets to the event, dinner, this, that, the whole deal. They spent more money. So we put on an in-house show for them that's different than what you see on TV, and then something different for television. And nobody had done that up until that point.
How do you make sure things don't get a little out of control? I mean, I think Conor McGregor is your worst case scenario when you had the Habib melee afterwards, because that was unfortunate. I'll tell you why. From a business standpoint, I'm almost positive you guys did an economic study on the impact of that fight.
Right.
You had some big tourism numbers.
Yep.
It got, I think, eclipsed by the hubbub of the entire McGregor melee, the Habib,
yep,
and then the suspensions, this and that. How do you make sure that, I understand the trash talk is part of the spiel leading up to it. I know you had a good time with Conor, with Mayweather. I mean, that was an unbelievable over-the-top spectacle. How do you make sure that a lot of the spectacle kind of effect doesn't eclipse the essence of the fight game? Yeah,
so if you look at the history with us, 20 years, we've never had something. We had 2 real bad incidents. And actually, the other one was way worse. The John Jones-Cormier fist fight in the lobby of the MGM was way worse than the Conor McGregor-Habib thing. And we're in the fight business. We know when there's real heat and guys are really... So we prepare ourselves for it. And we were ready that night, too. And if you see, Habib barely slipped over that octagon. The commission guy that was there almost had his legs, but just missed him. And we had that thing shut down in seconds after it happened and had everything under control. It's unfortunate, but these things happen. It's the fight game, man. This is a crazy business. People say crazy things, do crazy things, and we do the best we can to keep it from getting too out of control.
you have any breaking news on Habib versus Conor? Any rematch stuff? What do you got for us?
Well, no, Habib is fighting Dustin Poirier in Abu Dhabi in September.
And after that?
Then I don't know. Then we'll see. Tony Ferguson just came off a great win this weekend over Cowboy Cerrone. And I'm assuming he's next. And then we'll see what happens with Conor, what Conor wants to do. Conor's super rich. It's hard to get guys to fight when they're super rich.
So he's super rich, but yet I think, doesn't he want a piece of UFC? Are you gonna sell a little piece since he has some money to spend?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he wants to buy it, though. I think he wants us to give it to him.
I thought you have to buy yourself in a little share.
You do. Listen, Conor McGregor has been amazing for the company, the sport, introducing the sport to a lot of Europeans that didn't, otherwise watch it back then. He's been amazing. And part of his personality, Conor McGregor loves to negotiate. This guy really, truly is not just a fighter. He's actually a really good businessman. If you look at the whiskey brand that he's building right now and, what he's done with that in such a short amount of time, he's killing it. He's a kid that loves to fight, but he's also a kid who has a lot of other options. So it's not just fighting that's paying his bills.
I really appreciate you helped me with an interview with Ronda Rousey a few years ago.
Yep.
And we talked about this very topic, Rousey as a money manager. She was stocking away her money.
Yep.
What is she, still in Venice? Or
she's brilliant. Yeah, she owns a house in Venice on the beach, and she has another house now. I don't know where the hell it is in California, but it looks like she's out in the middle of Oregon somewhere. She's got animals, ducks, pigs, chickens, cows, and all this stuff. And yeah, she's been very smart. She put her money away, and she just retired from the WWE, where she killed it too, and she's looking to settle down and have kids now.
I think one of the great compliments to UFC is when it becomes part of our popular culture. And I think if you notice, just this past week, we had another kind of goofball tweet by the Biebs, this Justin Bieber guy.
Right.
Wants to fight Tom Cruise, UFC style, bring in the cage. I think he even tagged you on his tweet.
Right.
What was your reaction when you see these kind of stunts?
Well, I didn't know if it was real or not. I still don't know if it's real. Everybody's talking about it, and but Justin hasn't contacted me. Or
if it's real, would you consider trying to negotiate something?
Listen, first of all, maybe Justin Bieber wants to fight Tom Cruise for whatever reason. I highly doubt Tom Cruise wants to fight Justin Bieber. I'm 50. I think Tom Cruise is 56. I don't think anybody at 56 is looking to fight anybody. But I'll tell you this, if Justin Bieber wants to fight Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise wants to fight Justin Bieber, we can definitely talk. We can definitely talk.
You basically have content for a celebrity deathmatch video right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, I want to play this little snippet from that video. I thought it was really terrific.
Thank you.
And I have it set up. I'm going to... Why don't you just take a look at it? And when you had enough...
So I get on the phone and I start making some phone calls. I call him back and I'm like, 6, 7, 8 million. It's probably what I can get. He says, okay. I hang up the phone. So, I think we're done. I think we're done and it's over. And fuck, man. I'm like, fuck, I believe in this thing, but we're not going to make it.
What was going through your mind back then? And to go from that point to the closing of a $4 billion deal.
Yeah.
Talk about the journey of that.
Well, every day in the early days was a battle. Every day is a battle today. I mean, it never ends. People think that, you sell for $4 billion and then the company's super successful. You cut the ESPN deal and, it's all,
you
everything
you sit back and you buy properties and build houses.
Exactly. And everything's just on cruise control. So not true. It's every day is a battle. Every day you have people coming after you. So it's it's business, man. You know, I've heard people say a million times, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to start my own business because I'd like to work for myself, take time off when I want, do it. Yeah, okay. There is no time off when you own a business. You're married to it. But in the early days, we lived day to day. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring and what would happen. And, you know, we would get into the office early in the morning. And, you know, now I get into the office in the morning and I work out for a couple hours and I take a shower, you know, and whatever. That's a lot different. In the early days, we didn't work out. We didn't do any of that stuff. You were just in the office, and we wouldn't leave the office. There's a local guy named Kirk Hendrick who was our...
he was your legal counsel.
That's right. Yeah. He was our legal counsel and ended up becoming the chief operating officer of the UFC. And he and I wouldn't leave till, you know, 3, 4 in the morning sometimes. And Kirk would have literally piles of stuff all over his office, like everywhere, on the floor, on the desk, everything of work that needed to be caught up. And sometimes that guy would pull all-nighters and stay all night and into the next day. So that was our mindset back then. It was, you know, there was no 9 to 5 and hanging out, you know. We still had fun and we enjoyed building the business, but we worked.
Dana, you mentioned missing the brothers. In fact, they consider you a brother.
Right.
And talk a little about their hopes for an NFL franchise, because I think, you know, when in doubt, I always look you up on TMZ.
Right.
I can find you there.
Yep.
Besides ESPN and the Le Batard show.
Because TMZ's everywhere.
Yeah.
One of them's probably right out here right now. They're everywhere. You can't hide from those guys.
Anyway, so what's the latest with their NFL team aspirations?
TMZ just got Lorenzo the other day in New York, and Lorenzo confirmed that they are looking at NFL teams. They don't think anything's available right now.
Did they get a shot at Carolina? Because I remember their owner was pushed out. The Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the Panthers. I heard that the Broncos were available, that the Chargers might be up for sale. So, you know, we'll have to see how this plays out. But, yeah, if they buy a team, I'm in. I will partner up with them. And you know, we looked at something a couple of years ago, and not in the NFL.
Oh, okay.
In the NBA, we looked at a team, and we got outbid. Me and the brothers, and
wasn't Houston, was it? By the Cousins, the cousin Fertitta?
Might be.
Oh man.
so yeah. So we're. I would love to be back in business with them and do something. Obviously, you know, I'm very busy and very focused over here, but financially, I would jump in with those guys, and I just signed a new 10-year deal to stay on at the UFC. So. In 10 years, I can do something with them every day.
Talk about the ESPN deal, because you know, previously you had a relationship with Fox, and then you switched gears with ESPN, which I think went into effect January 1st, just this year.
Right.
Talk a little about the scope of the deal, because as you know, especially for the millennials, everything is very digital. Everything is cell phone oriented.
Right.
Do you look at that as the main platform for conveying UFC content at this point with ESPN Plus?
Yeah, our deal with Fox was amazing. We had a 7-year deal with them. Without Fox, there is no ESPN.
And they did the show, the Contender. Didn't they do the they had your show?
No, that show was on Fight Pass.
Oh, okay.
So it was called Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series.
Okay. That
was on Fight Pass. Now it's going to ESPN Plus. We actually start filming that like next week next week. Okay. So the Fox deal was incredible. 7 years, you know, huge money at the time for us, and couldn't have been better. The relationships that I built at Fox, I'll have for a lifetime. And I love everybody over there. We couldn't have done it without them. Then we go to ESPN. How much this business has grown in 5 months with ESPN is phenomenal.
Can you give some financial, you know,
when I say
examples?
This business, I'm talking about our ratings. We're on par right now to break every record we've ever had for ticket sales in a year, blowing our budgets out of the water. International pay-per-view is going through the roof. Even which, all the critics, we got so many critics, so many idiots that think they know what they're talking about and don't. But talking about how because ESPN Plus is behind a paywall, that UFC Fight Pass will die. UFC Fight Pass's numbers are up big time.
How many members do you have with Fight Pass?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now. We're up about 30% since being with ESPN.
Okay.
Now, if you look at everything that's happened, you get on a network. ESPN is the biggest, baddest sports network on earth. They're the best, and they're the best at what they do. And it just goes to show when you get on a platform like that, the tide rises, and it's everything in your business, not just one thing, two things. The entire business elevates. So that's 5 months. What do you think this business is going to look like in 3 years with being with these guys? And you can tell just from watching ESPN what a huge priority we are to them.
You have a ton of content on ESPN too. It is unbelievable.
Yeah,
just
it's
the other
awesome.
night they had talking about Conor. They had the top 10 personalities, right? On pretty much prime time out here on the West Coast.
It's incredible. I'm telling you, it's just, and being on this platform has done so much for our business already. And the stuff that we're working on with them, like you were saying, the millennials, they're digital. Everything's on the phone. Everything's on, they're all cord cutting, getting rid of cable, direct TV. And I always believed, I told you years ago, I didn't know it was streaming. I didn't know how it would work. But I believe that as technology got better, there would be a day where the world could watch something at the same time. Ends up it's streaming, whether you're streaming on your phone or bouncing it to your TV or whatever you're doing. It became a reality, and it's going to literally blow this business out of the water.
Let me see if I could get an update from you on an interesting initiative that I was talking to Lorenzo about a few years ago, and that was streaming UFC content on cell phones in Africa. I mean, Africa was actually a targeted market.
We're huge in Africa.
What happened with that?
Yeah, we're huge in Africa, and now we've got an African champion in Usman.
Right.
And in Israel Adesanya is Nigerian too. So we actually have African champions, and Francis Ngannou is African, and yeah, it's the UFC has been on TV over there for like 10 years. And there's a company, I think it's called the ECW, or is that right? Do you know that? The African, they have an organization over there that's actually very popular in Africa that they do smaller fights with. And they're actually a part, and when you think of Africa, they're actually a part of our long-term strategic planning.
Let me ask you, you had brought up the issue of critics, and this goes to the point of how UFC has really become part of pop culture in the United States. There was, I think, was it Academy Awards where the MMA came up, and who's the actress who said, where's the art in MMA or something to that effect?
Yeah, she was talking about it, I guess we'll just have MMA on TV from now on or something like that. What's her name? The big one, the biggest one, the biggest actress.
Was it
Streep? Meryl Streep. Yes.
What was your reaction to a Meryl Streep actress?
She's definitely
getting some cracks in on UFC MMA.
Listen, it's cool. She's a huge actress and everything else, but she's definitely not in my demographic. You know what I mean? She's 70-year-old woman that I'm sure can't stand anything to do with fighting. So I'm not too worried about her opinion on MMA.
Let's move to another subject. LVSportsBiz.com looks at the entire integration of business, politics, sports, stadiums, facilities. And I was really interested in the fact that, talk a little about your experience at the Republican convention with Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of that must have been, for you, a pretty exciting moment in your personal life, I would assume.
Yeah.
Having that platform and talking under those circumstances versus the typical UFC media crowd.
Yeah, I have listen, I'm not a political guy at all. And
How did you get drawn into that particular convention?
So I have a long time relationship with Trump. When we first bought the company, you know, this thing wasn't allowed on TV. It wasn't allowed on pay-per-view, and venues didn't want us either. So as we started looking around for venues, Trump actually reached out and said, would love to have you guys out here at the Taj Mahal. And we were like, great. We cut a deal with him. Not only did
he actually was proactive and reached out to you guys?
Yeah. Not only did he saw the whole MMA thing coming. He's a big MMA fan. So he called me like, I don't know how long ago the fight was, like 3-4 months ago, when Cormier knocked out Stipe Miocic.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, tell me you saw that coming. I didn't see that coming. There's no way anybody saw this coming, that he would knock out Stipe. He was going crazy over that fight. But yeah, and when we did the fight at the Taj, not only did he take us in, cut us a great deal, he showed up, was there from the first fight till the main event. We did that twice with him. Then when we left the Taj and went to the Meadowlands to do a bigger event, he even showed up to that event too. So everything that has ever happened to me in my career that was good, President Trump was the first guy to reach out and say, congratulations, I knew you were going to do it. And he's been such a great stand-up, friend to me. And
what was it like going to the convention 3 years ago?
Well, leading up to the convention,
it was an unbelievable year for you. You were just coming off the sale of UFC, going to the convention. Like, must have been the same summer, I guess.
Yeah, well, it was that summer. I was at the pool at Red Rock with my family. It was somebody's birthday. I don't remember who, and my phone starts blowing up with texts and phone calls. And I guess the president had just said that to the media that he was going to ask me to speak at the Republican convention. And everybody's blowing me up. I said, listen, I don't know anything about this. He hasn't called me, any of this stuff. And just to show you, the Trump that I know is different than the Trump that everybody else knows.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Oh yeah, he's completely different. He's literally the best guy ever. He's one of the coolest people you could ever meet. And this isn't just I met him once and he was cool. I mean, you're talking about an almost 20-year relationship with this guy. And so he calls me and he says, listen, if you don't want to do this, I completely understand, and no hard feelings whatsoever, but I would be honored if you would speak at the Republican National Convention for me. And I said, I'm in.
Uh-huh.
I'm honored, and I'll be there. And that was that.
Did you write the speech yourself and
Yeah.
get it edited, or what was the creative process there?
I'm not a big speech guy. I'm not a big write a speech and read a speech kind of guy. That kind of throws me off, but I'll jot down bullet points and things that I want to cover, and then I just go over it and get it all in my head. And when you're talking about something that you truly believe and that you're really passionate about and that you feel, you shouldn't need a speech anyway. You should be able to just get up and fire it off. And that most of the time in my life, that's what I do.
So there was kind of a act 2 to this, because you guys, I think, did a one of the 25 series.
We did
on Trump, if I recall.
We did. Yeah,
What was
the relationship between Trump and I, and his relationship with the sport of mixed martial arts. That's a really good one too.
What who actually produced that series? Because again,
we did.
Okay.
Yeah, in-house. That was done in-house, but we went out and we got really good directors, like well-known directors, guys that have done 30 for 30s and on ESPN, and have a history of doing killer stuff.
And talk about some of the at this point, the one thing that strikes me about you, Dana, the single-mindedness and the commitment to the growth of UFC, and this kind of seamless transition through the $4 billion transaction. But when you get your downtime, what does Dana White do to kind of, do you decompress ever?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I actually did see you, I think it was at your son's football game or something. So,
yeah.
You're doing some of the parent stuff.
I do all the parent stuff, even if I have to be out of town. And even in the old days, one of the great things about technology and having one of the biggest production companies in town is, I would stream that stuff and watch it even if I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't missed a play, a football game, anything. I've seen it all. And then, so most of the time I spend time with my kids and hang with them. Now they're getting older. They don't want to hang out with me anymore. But I like to play blackjack. I got a place up in Maine. I go up there, bring a couple of my friends, and we go up there and, ride motorcycles. And I got about every toy you can imagine up there. And we drink.
Is that kind of like a
we
summer?
Have fun.
Is that like a summer retreat?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. I don't go near that place when it's wintertime. Yeah.
And talk about your connection to Boston, because if I recall, you were pretty happy about the Super Bowl outcome.
Yep, very happy.
What are your connections to Boston, New England at this
point?
So
that's where my family's from. That's where we're from. And we moved out to Vegas when I was like 10 years old. And I was here from like 78, 79. Moved out of here in 87. Went back to Boston. Was in Boston till 96. And then moved back to Vegas again in 96.
So that decade in Boston, I think this is a story that you've told multiple times about being muscled out.
Yeah.
People were, I guess, shaking
100
you
million
down.
times I've told this story. Yeah. So I lived in South Boston, which they call Southie, and it was run by Whitey Bulger and his crew at the time. And they just did a movie, a few years ago called Black Mass, telling the whole story. And basically, they had this thing in Southie called the Code of Silence, which meant anything that happened, you and I get in a fight, you shoot me, I steal something from you, anything goes on, you don't tell the police. It's all dealt with in town and basically through Whitey. And, nobody knew at the time, but he was in with the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did tell, the FBI would tell him that they were, that it's a pretty crazy story. But, these guys, one of his guys wasn't him. He never approached me.
He was like one of his lieutenants? Or
well, yeah, like his right-hand man.
Yeah, okay.
Approached me and was trying to get me to pay him, and it was like $2,500, which might as well have been $25,000 to me at that time. And it got to the point I didn't pay. Then it got to the point where I was at home one weekend and it was a Saturday, and they called me on the phone and said, "You got till tomorrow at 1:00 to pay us the money." And I said, "Or what?" I said, "Are you going to find out what?" So I literally hung up the phone, picked it back up, called Delta, and got a one-way flight back to Vegas that night. And that's it. The rest is history.
Well,
and the crazy thing about that is everything's crazy about that. But when I came back in 96 that summer, a friend of mine named Adam Corrigan, his family's been in this town for years. They own a bunch of restaurants and stuff here in town. And he was getting married. And he in the fall. I came back in like July. He's getting married in the fall. We reconnect, the whole deal. He invites me to his wedding. I go to his wedding, and I bump into Frank and Lorenzo.
Wow.
And we start talking at the wedding. And they're like, "Heard you doing the boxing thing, everything else. We want to work out with you." From that wedding, Frank Lorenzo and I got together the Monday after the wedding and have been together ever since.
What year was that?
So if I don't, that's 96.
Okay.
The year I come back. So if I don't leave Boston the way that I did and as abruptly as I did, none of this happens. None of this happens. It's actually really crazy. It trips me out when I think about, how everything fit together and how it all worked.
But talk about that little 5-year window where there are still people in Las Vegas who remember Dana White, the trainer, the boxing guy. I mean, there's a lot of people.
So I keep looking at Lene. That's my boss over there, Lene. She runs my whole life. So where were we? Chicago? We were just in Chicago. She was with me when this happened. We just got done.
I mean, for 238.
Yeah, we just got done doing a press conference there, the stare downs.
Right.
And this woman walks up to me and goes, I used to take your class in Vegas with the best class. You know, she starts, and I still run into people that tell me that. And yeah, it's funny because if you look at all the things that have happened to me, and you know, you couldn't have a better story and how my life turned out and all these things, but some of the best times of my life were back then when I was doing that.
Talk about looking back at those times, because, you know, I just bump into people all the time because I mentioned LVSportsBiz, Dana White. Oh, yeah, he busted my ass. He was
Right.
like putting me through the routine, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, let me ask you this, Dana White. Could you, if there was no UFC and you continued on that track, would you still be as happy as you are right now?
100%. Oh, yeah, definitely. I loved what I did. I love fighting. I love everything about fighting. And if I didn't do this, I'd do that. That business was, you ask anybody in town that took the class, anybody in town that trained with me at that time, that was, it was huge. It was big. I actually used to train him. He was a fighter. He was a kid, 16, 17. I trained him. He went on to, you know, become a police officer and, you know, sergeant. He retired now, but, you know, what'd you put in, 23 years? Put in 23 years, but I used to train him. And, you know, I still bump into people all the time. And obviously it's incredible, you know, everything that's happened, but I'd be happy as hell doing that still. I loved it.
Let me ask you,
You know, people that find out that I used to teach boxing classes and all this shit,
right?
try to make fun of me and like, oh, he was a boxer size. I don't give a shit what you call me. It was awesome. I had the best time ever. I loved every minute of it. I own 3 gyms here in town, and the classes that I taught were the biggest classes anybody's ever seen in these gyms here in town.
You were a legit businessman before UFC, man.
I did. The last job I had was when I was 19 years old, and I worked for myself. After that, I walked out of that job and worked for myself. The difference was, you know, I had a business back then where I was making, you know, I think the last year before I went with the Fertitas, I made something like, I want to say 360 grand that I made and put in my pocket that year. You know, in the gym business, a guy who owns gyms and does training, that's a massive number. And I was always looking how to make it bigger. How do I expand? How do I make this thing bigger? The difference was when I got into the UFC, I went from dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars, you know? And I don't care who you are, that takes some adjustment. So, I learned a lot from the Fertitta brothers along the way.
Let me ask you about a phrase you already brought up today. You actually have it, I think, on a wall in one of your buildings. Fighting is in the DNA of human beings. Do you ever get, and it's a little off-the-wall question, Dana, do pacifists ever, like, question that kind of philosophy that, like, can we possibly not always fight? I mean, is there some kind of peaceful reconciliation or is this fighting because of money, though? I mean,
no. Those are people that hope to change the world and hope that, you know, we don't kill animals anymore and we don't go to war and we don't do this, we don't do that. In the perfect world, and not just in pacifists, but in everybody, it would be nice if we could get to that. It's impossible. It's not what we do as human beings. As human beings, it's inside of us, whether you want to admit it or you don't, whether you like it or you don't. It's a fact. And I tell you right now, if a fight broke out there, right now, every one of us in this room would run over to that window and watch it. We'd be like, holy shit, there's a fight. There's a level of energy and excitement that happens when a fight breaks out, and it's happened to all of us since we were in school. It would happen in school. 2 kids would start fighting, and what happens? Everybody runs over and has to watch it. You have to see it. And then what do? You talk about it the rest of the day. What happened? And who is this? And you're telling everybody at lunch, and you're telling everybody after school. Like it or not, it's inside our DNA. It's who we are as human beings.
But you took it one step further, though. You monetized that process, though.
Right. And I believed in that philosophy. It was my philosophy. Fighting is in our DNA came from me. And I truly believe that. And I got the Fertittas to believe that too, that it could work everywhere and all over the world. But to be fair, they became super passionate about the sport too. I mean, we started doing jiu-jitsu and we were rolling 3-4 days a week and trying to kill each other.
In the video, I think that was kind of like the first lessons that
Right.
really got them turned on.
That's right.
Let me ask you this about the Fertittas, since you were there with them. They had a really, I thought, touching moment in that video about how they're talking about their old man, about the dad said,
Right.
I don't want you boys to do this.
Right.
And
How about this?
And Frank actually said, well, we have to do it.
How about this?
Okay.
So I told you the story. I leave Boston, come to Vegas, bump into them at the wedding, and then, we've been together ever since, right? How about they've never gone against their father's wishes ever? Ever. If their father said no, it was no. They didn't do it. But for this one, they went against what he asked. And I don't know if Lorenzo or Frank covered it in the story. I don't remember, but their father later came back to them and said, I was wrong and you were right. This thing's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think I remember that little anecdote.
That happened. So Mr. Fertitta, ended up becoming the biggest fan, so it's such a crazy story about timing and, just how things are meant to be. It's insane.
The video snippets are excellent. I think people should just call it up on YouTube and check it out.
Thank you.
In wrapping things up, last 5-10 minutes, talk a little about the projects. You had mentioned some of the, I believe, the training institutes, the performing institutes. You have a unbelievable world-class facility right now.
Thank you.
On the campus. And talk about the expansion that I think you guys are planning.
Yeah, so we are, we built the Performance Institute. We had fighters. I'll give you an example. The New England Patriots, right? Tom Brady, gets hurt. They don't send Tom Brady away to go see a doctor and then, hey, call us in a year when you're feeling better. The Patriots send him to the best doctor on the planet. They get him taken care of. Then they bring him in to their facility and have the best physical therapists working on him, the best strength and conditioning coaches, et cetera, et cetera. This is what other sports have. Fighting has never had that. And this was actually Lorenzo's baby. This was Lorenzo's idea. How do we prevent the things that we can't prevent, which are injuries and things like this? Mm-hmm. You build a big, beautiful facility. You hire the best of the best. You bring the athletes in here and you educate them how to cut weight better, how to train better, how to, eat better. The list goes on and on. And that was his vision. And when we built this new building, we did this and it's been phenomenal. I mean, it's been remarkable what has been done with a lot of these fighters so far. And at the same time, taking the sport to another level by having this facility. It's worked out so well. Now, as we continue to grow around the world and look for young up-and-coming talent, we're going to build these facilities. They're free. The fighters can come in. They can train for free. They can get free rehab and physical therapy, and the list goes on and on. So I already found some dirt in Mexico City. So that one's already underway. Mm-hmm. Now we got to find 2 more spots in Mexico. I want 3 of them in Mexico. Then we're going to Puerto Rico. We're going to find some dirt over there. We're going to build one over in Puerto Rico. Next week, I fly to China to cut the ribbon for the grand opening of the Performance Institute in China. Now, next door to our facility here in Vegas, we just bought a 200,000 square foot building, and we built what's called the UFC Apex. Now, the UFC Apex is going to go hand in hand with the content that you love. We're going to provide tons of free content, live content that comes out of this building that will go on UFC Fight Pass with other promotions. Tuesday Night Contender Series. ESPN gets one of them. Fight Pass gets the other season.
Sounds kind of like a studio on campus.
It is. It's a studio, and we can do more than that. We can have live concerts there. Mm-hmm. We can put on. I can put on a fight at 9:00 in the morning with nothing but Russian fighters, right? That drops in Russia in prime time. Then I can switch the whole place out and put on, a boxing match at 2:00 for Australia. Then I can put on something at 5:00 live for, you know what I mean? We can do concerts, we can do comedy, we can do all kinds of things, and that's what we're looking to do next door.
Talk about the market in China and the kind of numbers that you think you could grab there.
Well, let me tell you what. The other thing that I'm doing when I go to China for the PI opening is there's a girl named Weili Zhang, and she's ranked number 6 in the world, and she is a badass. And we're announcing that she's going to fight Jessica Andrade for the title over there in China. So we have a Chinese woman who is very good and has a ton of potential fighting for a world title in China. So obviously that's massive.
Dana, listen, I'm going to wrap things up. First of all, thank you so much for making the effort to get down here.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to give you one of my books. It's about the creation of LVSportsBiz after I got hit by a car in Florida, and the whole story of coming back here 2 years ago to launch the new site. And I found a little space for UFC in there.
Okay.
And so that's yours.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe you can, it's a quick read. You can probably knock it out in a couple hours on the plane to China.
Okay. Very cool.
But I want to thank you for making the effort. And I've always enjoyed talking to you through the years about all the different UFC developments. I mean, I don't think anyone can deny the single-mindedness that you have and the love for the sport and the love for the people involved. In fact, I think the first time I met you, actually, you were holed up in that little little hole of yours, like where you were doing the tweets and stuff, like during the during the fights and stuff.
Yeah.
And you were in there with Mike Tyson, I think.
Yeah.
And you would hang out with him. And obviously, you can't separate the fight from the man of Dana White. It's part of your DNA.
Listen, I believe that, Lorenzo said it many times, and it's so true. This is what I was put on earth to do. And where I've been very lucky is that I knew it at a young age. I knew what I wanted and what I wanted to do, and it all worked out.
Dana, thank you so much. This is Alan Snell with LVSportsBiz.com. Tune in on Thursday for our podcast number 4, where we wrap up celebrating our 2nd anniversary of LVSportsBiz.com, where business meets sports here in Las Vegas.
Boom.